All right, welcome into New York City and Writer's Block. I'm your host, Bill Reiter. It's great to be back from vacation. Thank you for being here. Jerry Palm, bracketologist extraordinaire, is going to be on the program. We're going to begin a little combine conversation here. We'll have it, of course, on this show and the network for the next few days. And the biggest star in the NBA might just burn out before his first season in Hollywood comes to an end. All of that and more starts from New York right now. All right, like any would-be benevolent dictator, the terms of that benevolence is always dictated by how well things are going in their own lives, which brings us to LeBron James, who, make no mistake, Magic Johnson now knows this, Luke Walton certainly knows it, and so do those young players in Los Angeles, is the sole power with that Lakers organization. And as LeBron's edginess goes one way or the other, sometimes so does his team. Remember, wasn't that long ago, All-Star break arrived, a little bit of a relaxation. LeBron's an All-Star again, gets to be a captain, and made the announcement coming out of that All-Star break as a part of it that it was time to activate, cue the superhero music, playoff mode.
You know, my level of intensity has to be, unfortunately for me, because I don't like to do it at such an early time. I'm a little bit different. But it's been activated, so look forward to seeing what we can do.
All right, so let's decode real quick. I don't like to do it at such an early time. Translation, all these young bums around me have forced me to go to playoff mode early. And I covered LeBron back in the day, his first year in Miami. I spent a lot of my career writing about, interviewing the guy, talking about the guy, like a lot of us do, sports fans, obsessing about the guy. And things can go one direction or the other pretty quickly in LeBron James' world when you're a part of his vortex. And it seemed like, coming out of the All-Star break, that things were going to go well. The playoff mode was going to be effective. Lakers beat the Rockets. It's always a huge rivalry game for LeBron. He's talked about the fact he gets up for games against his friends. He and Chris Paul remarkably close, right? Feels like maybe the Lakers trend in the right direction, try to chase down that playoff spot, that 8 seed at least, and prevent LeBron James from missing the postseason for the first time in the first couple of years of his career in the NBA as a professional, and then to a Pelicans team that even with Anthony Davis, playoff mode, LeBron's got to be able to best. But this was an AD-less Pelicans team, no brow. The Lakers go down. And it's not just the loss or the way in which the Lakers got absolutely manhandled. It's the fact that afterwards, LeBron called out his team. Did really what Kyrie Irving did not that long ago, and we crushed Kyrie here on the show, how this young group might not get it, how this young group might not understand or have what it takes for the intensity to get in there and understand that playoff basketball requires that you absolutely get it done. This is LeBron throwing his guys under the bus. This is LeBron James trying to inspire and to motivate. But here's the problem and the reality. LeBron has always led, I don't know if fear is the right word. It's certainly not respect. It's always been based on the understanding of his greatness and that his raw talent in a league made of the most talented basketball players on the face of the earth outshines all of them. And there's always been a fine line for LeBron between people who get it and understand it and push away their jealousy and those who are put out by somebody they think maybe has a massive ego, even if it's well-deserved. It's why LeBron likes to surround himself with friends. It's why LeBron likes to surround himself with veterans. Those guys understand, as LeBron would tell you, he likes to quote The Godfather, it's not personal, it's strictly business. That's not true for young players. It's a process. And LeBron's approach to leadership, which is really just LeBron's personality, because LeBron doesn't adjust his style for anybody, doesn't always work. You throw in the fact that there's a report the team bus left without Luke Walton after the Pelicans lost. And by the way, that was proven not to be true, but it just speaks to the drama and the unhappiness and the weirdness percolating with the Lakers. The reality is the relationship between LeBron and Luke Walton is clearly not very strong. And it's easy to blame Luke Walton. This is a team that has LeBron James, and at least if the season ended today, wouldn't be in the postseason. Remember, LeBron couldn't get along with Eric Spoelstra. LeBron couldn't get along with David Blatt, even though Blatt was a very impressive coach on paper, had made the finals, had a pretty good winning percentage. LeBron James, most places he's gone, hasn't got along with coaches because it's a joke, but it's also a reality. LeBron really is the coach. LeBron's also the general manager, and he is, despite being the best or second best player in the history of the game, One of the worst GMs we've ever seen. That was true last year in Cleveland. And the consequence is the same here in Los Angeles. Whether he's the guy making the moves or Magic's the guy making the moves, consider the former Lakers and the seasons they're having, just the days that they had on Saturday. D'Angelo Russell, 40 points and 7 rebounds for a really fun and surprisingly good Brooklyn team. Julius Randle, who I love, part of that Pelicans team, 23 points and 3 rebounds against his former team. And I know, Lakers fans, there were some cap issues there in keeping Julius and bringing in the Mac guys. They plan to, but nonetheless, Randle's looked really good. Thomas Bryant, who you ask? Thomas Bryant from Washington, 23 points, 12 rebounds on Saturday. Randle is the oldest of these guys at 24, and they gave up on at least Randle and a lot of the young talent there so they could try to bring in some major talent. But the bad mojo since LeBron joined the Lakers has continued. There is no Paul George. He's not there. Luke Walton, his notion he was going to have a up-tempo style basketball predicated on his time as the assistant in Golden State has just turned into another sour coaching relationship with LeBron James, the best player on the face of the earth. And it all adds up to this reality, this fact coming off the Pelicans' loss. And LeBron James calling out his teammates again, and it probably not going to work again. The Lakers are currently 3 games out of that 7th and 8th spot, those final spots in the West. So you better hope that the Clippers or the Kings or the Spurs find a way to start losing a lot of games. I'm not betting against Greg Popovich. The Kings are young and tantalizingly interesting, ahead of schedule. And as much as I didn't think the Clippers were going to be successful when it felt like they moved on with that trade with Philly, Tobias Harris leaving LA, they played really interesting, 500 basketball since that's happened. The reality is those 3 teams clearly like playing together, and the Lakers don't, and those things matter. And beyond that, and LeBron's right when he says this, he just shouldn't throw his guys under the bus, activating playoff mode early is never a good sign for LeBron James. He's older than he used to be. We've seen him injured for the first time in a long time for an extended period. He will get worn down. So here's what you have, Los Angeles. Your aging superstar getting worn down too soon and trying, through his motivation, to bring his guys to a place of playoff basketball, wearing them down psychologically. It's a recipe for disaster. We've seen with LeBron teams before. As great as he is, as much as he'll carry you, when LeBron has had it with teammates and coaches who often are turned off by the fact he's had it with them, things usually don't end very well. I'm rooting for the Lakers. It's good for basketball. I hope they're in the playoffs, but it feels like far from a guarantee. And as much LeBron James going to playoff mode would help, it might help more if he remembers he's not surrounded by Dwayne Wade or Chris Bosh or Kyrie Irving or a loving fan base in Cleveland. Sometimes LeBron, it's the star who's got to change if he wants to lead the people who don't know what stardom is just yet. All right, let's talk some college basketball. Jerry Palm, bracketologist, going to join me here on the show. He's going to cut through all the noise and give you real insight on the teams to believe in and not to believe in as we start to get ready for a little March Madness. Jerry's going to join me here on Writer's Block in just a moment. All right, welcome back into New York City. It's Writer's Block. I'm Bill Reiter. Thanks for being here. Appreciate you returning. We're going to talk a little college basketball right now with the best bracketologist in the business, CBS Sports' own Jerry Palm joins me on the show. Jerry, thanks for making time, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again.
So start of the year, there was nothing but the gnashing of teeth over the net rating and how inaccurate a lot of folks thought it was. We've got more time, bigger sample size. What's your evaluation of how the net rating is doing relative to reality?
Well, the net wasn't going to be good in November. No rating system that starts everybody at scratch and has nothing from prior years is going to be good in November and December. So that was an overreaction. The net is different than the RPI primarily because the net has got an uncapped margin of victory that is a strong factor in the ratings. And you're seeing some teams benefit from that, probably nobody more than North Carolina State, which would be around 100 in the RPI because of a terrible non-conference schedule, the second worst in all of Division I. But because they beat a lot of those very bad teams by about 25 points a game, the net is a lot more forgiving and has got them in the top 40, and at least will get them a look for a possible NCAA tournament berth. So that'll really be an interesting case for the committee. But to me, that's the biggest difference. However, the committee is using the net exactly the same way they use the RPI, which is to just group teams together to define the quadrants, the quality of the opponents that you're playing. And if they're not using it any differently than that, I don't know that it matters that much because not that many teams are changing quadrants from the net to the RPI, but NC State is certainly one of them.
All right, Jerry, the number one team in the country right now are the Zags. From your vantage point, do they deserve to be there? Do you have them as your personal number one overall seed?
No, I have them third just because of the strength of their schedule, but certainly they're a national championship contender. They're the only team this season to beat Duke when Duke was at full strength. The problem for Gonzaga is that their league isn't very good. They only really played a handful of good teams because they have to prove themselves in November and December. So they beat Duke. They beat Washington at home. That was the only team that played them at home among the better teams they played. Lost to Tennessee, lost to Carolina. I think Gonzaga could be the overall number one. That's a team that's always difficult for the committee to judge because of the strength of their league, and that takes up so much of their schedule. And this year it's even harder because there's no number two really pushing them in their league like they have in most seasons.
Speaking, Jerry, of Duke, they fall to 3. We just saw there Virginia hops them in the AP poll at least. Where do you have Duke and Virginia in your rankings?
1 and 2, respectively. Overall number 1 and number 2. Duke is overall number 1 still, in part because they've got a high number of quality wins, 2 of which are wins over Virginia. And they're 3 of their losses, 2 of them have come when they've come shorthanded and lost key players, not just before the game when they had time to prepare, but early in the game when they had to try and play on the fly. And neither one of those went very well. I think healthy Duke is the best team in the country. I think the committee will feel that way as well. It'll be a little bit of time before we see healthy Duke again because Zion Williamson is expected to miss the Virginia Tech game coming up.
All right, so any chance at the ACC finding a way to lock in perhaps 3 1 seeds?
Well, North Carolina would probably have to win out at this point, and that means beating Duke in the regular season and then either Duke or Virginia or possibly both in the ACC tournament. If they do that, they probably deserve a number 1. We have seen in the past 3 number 1s from the same conference, but it's obviously pretty rare, special set of circumstances for that to happen. I wouldn't count on it just because of the competition at the top of the bracket with Michigan and Michigan State, Tennessee, Kentucky, all fighting for number 1 seeds. To get 3 teams from one conference seems pretty unlikely.
Yeah, you brought up Tennessee. They've lost 2 tough road games. One was an absolute heartbreaker. What do you make of the fact that Tennessee dropped, 7 spots?
Oh, in the polls? Yeah, the polls are really for entertainment purposes only. I mean, nobody really pays attention. The committee doesn't really care. That's voters, and they're all about what have you done for me lately. Tennessee has still got a pretty good resume. I've got them as the top number 2 seed in my bracket. They beat Gonzaga earlier in the year. So losing at Kentucky, that wasn't a very competitive game, a bad day. The LSU loss is a tough loss, but LSU's a really good team as well. They're going to get another shot at Kentucky and maybe see both of them in the conference tournament. So I think Tennessee is going to be fine.
All right, Jerry, speaking of cutting through the AP rankings and the entertainment value, give us the real deal here. What is your evaluation of that Houston team?
I think Houston is pretty good. The American Conference has given them a few quality opponents to test themselves against, and of course they beat LSU in non-conference play, which is good. I mean, you only got the 1 loss. That loss is to Temple. That Temple team may or may not make the NCAA tournament, and obviously they've still got some tough games left to go between here and then. But I think Houston can't be a 1 seed. They're not going to get that high. It's way too competitive. But they could be a 2, and if they finish with only 1 loss, I think they're definitely a 2 and no worse than a 3.
All right, Jerry, give us the conference, maybe they're the same conference, but the conference or conferences with the most teams to make the tournament and the conference that will do the most damage come the actual tournament.
Well, the most teams I think is probably going to end up being the Big Ten, but my current bracket has got 8 teams from the ACC, the SEC, the Big 12, and the Big Ten. I think that number is more difficult to sustain in the SEC and the Big 12 just because of the games remaining for the teams near the bottom of the bracket. Most damage in the tournament? Well, I think the ACC and the Big Ten, again, they've been the strongest leagues all season long. The ACC is stronger at the top than the Big Ten, but the Big Ten is the deepest league in the country by far. It's the deepest I've seen as a Big Ten follower in over 30 years of following it. So I think those two leagues are going to be the toughest to get rid of in this tournament.
Jerry, let's talk about a conference that's a total disaster. A few years ago, not that long ago, really felt like the Pac-12 was ascendant, some really dangerous teams, some young guys that were drafted at the very top of the NBA draft. What in the world is going on with the Pac-12, and when and how do they turn it around?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, the Pac-12 has had some problems off the court with Arizona, and I think that has a lot to do with why they're struggling this year. On the court, you have an injury at Oregon with Bol. I think Oregon we're talking about them as a tournament team if he can play, but he's out for the year, so that's no good. Washington is having a great year, at least in conference play. In non-conference, they played 4 teams that are going to be tournament teams and couldn't beat any of them. They actually came within 2 points of winning at Gonzaga. Arizona State has got 3 of the 5 total Pac-12 Quadrant 1 wins in non-conference play. That gives them a shot to be an at-large team, but they keep shooting themselves in the foot with bad losses at home. Now they've got 3 road games left, the 3 toughest conference road games on their entire schedule because they do not play at Washington in the regular season. They play both Oregon schools and Arizona to finish the season. How do you fix it? Better coaches, better talent. That's the only way you fix it. Get better players and coach them up. That's how the SEC has turned their fortunes around, and that's what it's going to take for the Pac-12 as well.
All right, Jerry, whether it's a so-called mid-major or maybe an under-the-radar Power 5 conference school, is there a team out there that you think maybe folks aren't paying enough attention to that could make a really deep, even Cinderella-like run in the tournament?
Well, among the ones we haven't already talked about, Buffalo out of the MAC, especially if they get a top half of the bracket seed, which they could. That's a borderline top 25 team. They beat Arizona in the tournament last year. They've got most of those guys back. Certainly they're built to make at least a second weekend kind of run. And watch out for Wofford from the Southern Conference. They've completely dominated that league. They didn't get the big win in non-conference play, but they don't have a bad loss. And they're 2 wins away from going 18-0 in that league, which is pretty good this year. They've got 4 teams in the top 100 of the net, which is not something you see from one of the smaller conferences normally. So Wofford has had a really good year. Belmont and Lipscomb have also had good years, 2 schools from Nashville, city rivals in different leagues. And, those are 4 teams that you could watch out for, and maybe one more, New Mexico State, who gave healthy Kansas a scare earlier in the season.
All right, Jerry, last question for you. When it's all said and done, when the conference tournaments are over, who would you, your best guess, who will the final 4 1 seeds be?
Duke, Virginia, Gonzaga, and Tennessee.
I love the love for Tennessee. Jerry Palm, you're a good man. We appreciate you. I'm sure we'll be talking to you a lot over the next few weeks. All right, good stuff by Jerry Palm. It's great to be back in the country. It's great to be back on the air. It's great to be talking a little college basketball with Jerry Palm. I need to find a way to get Jerry to fill out my bracket, at least the one I'm going to send to my buddy in Vegas for the big pool. Jerry knows his stuff. We've got so many things to hit, including with the Combine getting going tomorrow. We're going to go inside the numbers on some Combine facts you need to know when we come back to Writer's Block here from New York City in just a moment. All right, welcome back to Writer's Block here on CBS Sports HQ, your home for streaming sports. Combine starts tomorrow in Indianapolis. It will be the epicenter yet again of the NFL world, and we're going to go inside the numbers, some Combine facts, and we start with the number 4.22 because in 2017, Bengals receiver John Ross recorded the Combine's fastest ever 40-yard dash time with a 4.22. This year, the over-under for the best 40 time is set at 4.29. Next up on Inside the Numbers, 4.12. Though unofficial, it is said that the mighty Bo Jackson notched a mind-boggling 4.12 40 time in the 1986 NFL Combine. For perspective, while Jackson weighed nearly 230 pounds, John Ross weighs just 190 pounds. Bo knows everything about greatness. God, he was so good. How about 4.37, 4.37? That is the over-under for Kyler Murray's 40-yard dash time, 4.37. only 2 quarterbacks in combine history have run a sub 4.40. Michael Vick recorded the fastest time for quarterbacks when he ran a 4.3340 at the 2001 combine. Next up is 40. This year's over-under for the most bench press reps is set at 40. Since 1998, just 18 combine participants have put up 225 at least 40 times. However, 2 of those came last year. Harrison Phillips did it, and Vita Vea did it. They recorded 42 and 41 reps, respectively. How about the number 9? Just 9 players in the history of the combine have achieved higher than a 43.5 vertical jump, which is this year's over-under for best vertical. Of those 9 players, 3 of them have been named to Pro Bowls: Cameron Wake, Chris Chambers, and Byron Jones. And finally, the number 46, former Jags and Cowboys safety Gerald Sensabaugh is the only player to record a 46-inch vertical at the NFL Combine. Michael Jordan's highest documented vertical at any point was also 46 inches, which measures out as the 3rd highest vertical in the history of the NBA. By the way, I do want to take a quick moment and just say this. Tomorrow is a pretty cool day for all of us here at CBS Sports HQ. February 26, 2018 was the day that this network, your home for streaming sports, went live and launched after a lot of hard work by a lot of great people in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, now many of them in Stamford, Connecticut, and we are thrilled that you're here. We love that you're watching. We very much appreciate you, and we can't believe it's already been a year, our 1-year anniversary, here on the show tomorrow. So we'll have more great coverage planned for you here on Writer's Block, and of course throughout the entire network. We're going to keep you locked in with all the information you as a fan, you as a gambler, you need to know, including just moments from now when Tommy Tran takes over from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. He's got you covered for the next 30 minutes. Then Eric Casillas, who did an amazing job. That guy works a lot. That's a hard-working, talented dude. Amazing job filling in last week when I was out of the country on vacation. Very, very cool of him. And he'll be on Sportsline 30 minutes from now. Thank you for hanging out. Thank you for being here. It is great to be back on the air, and I love that tomorrow's our 1-year anniversary. We'll see you then. My name is Bill Reiter. The show is Writer's Block. Thanks for hanging out.